Alright, we've got 2 packages here. That's right, that one's not anime. So let's get the anime open first. Okay. Yeah, this one, let's see, there may be some difficulty opening it because I know here's the full tab. But it's got a little sticker. Alright. This one is 2 Nintendo Switch games. We're basically, I decided to go ahead and order Metroid Prime Remaster. Obviously that's not either of these. In fact, the sticker on the back. Okay. And that one I kind of expected to take a little longer because everybody likes the physical copies. There weren't enough, yada yada yada. We have 2 here that are sequels to games I already have. You know, I went searching for other games that I might want to get. And while I never did play whatever the first Void whatever game was, here's a sequel to it. So yeah, I've got a second one of those, and Octopath Traveler 2, which I don't think I have the energy to try to play. Although that's the 8 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a curiosity, but you know, we'll have to see as it is. So yeah, spoiler alert, eventually I'll probably get my copy of whatchamacallit. So first up we have Heaven Official's Blessing Season 1. Okay. Like, I couldn't remember what this was and I was having trouble reading the font. Come on, plastic. Get off of there. I especially want it off because this limited edition packaging is squishy and it feels wrong, and I want to get it off so I can feel that the DVD itself feels correct. Yeah, I guess I'm not going to put these back in there because we've got bookmarks. You know what? I kind of want to take a look at them. The art looks kind of neat. I'm wondering if there's some thought about this maybe being a series that would appeal to bookwormy ladies, and maybe they would be more likely to use bookmarks? I don't know. I just had a weird image in my head. I'm like, oh, well, if they were thinking that, well, these are actually pretty bookmarks. Although I like the first one the most. I guess because with the face faded or covered like that, maybe that's actually a girl, and that, if that is, then that's kind of cheating because, you know, me, guy, like girl, blah, 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 blah. You know, but they all look pretty nice. I think it's pretty cool. This, we have 2 individuals. And because I don't know the series and I don't know who they are, I'm guessing they are these 2. We're looking at it, I think they're 2 guys, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I can't tell for a lot of these characters. Oh. That looks a little less masculine. I don't know. I'm not sure what kind of series I'm looking at. The art style is androgynous that I just can't tell, but they have this character sitting in what are a lot of traditionally female poses, which makes me think maybe they're a girl, but I don't know if this is, you know, boy love or a straight romance. It feels like it's a series made for girls, so it could go either way, but I really can't tell. Maybe that says more about me than about the series, though. You know what? I wonder... Nope, that doesn't fit there. Okay, I have a special box for lots of extra features, or yeah, extras and stuff. That was just my Mac letting me know I have updates. I wish it would be more considerate and not make fucking noises every single fucking time. Oh yes, I don't rate this as something for children, so I get to say whatever fucking cuss words I want. Now granted, I'm sure y'all get tired of hearing that. Loves and lies. But you know, maybe you... I don't know, I've seen some people call me wholesome. I haven't heard anybody say it recently, so maybe that's changed, but it's okay if it has. But if it does, maybe it entertains you to know what does set me off, and one of the things is the constant notifications. Oh my gosh. Constant notifications. Did I complain about that last week? I don't remember. My phone's been in Do Not Disturb for a while now, so I can't remember the timing of everything. Alright, this was... did I already say Love and Lies? I'm not sure what's going on here. Just there... look like two characters. I don't know. I was thinking there's something androgynous looking about them as well. Is this them? When the government dictates who you marry, the course of true love may require breaking a few rules. So maybe it's about boy love. And one or both are disguising themselves as girls? There's an extra pair of feet there, so I might be missing some context here. That seems relevant, but I don't know. Interesting. If they're both two boy love ones, then it's interesting that they're both here. But at the same time, I have to admit that I'm not entirely sure based on just looking at it. But this one we see is Japanese with English subtitles only, region A only. What in the world was this one? Oh, yeah, here. We have a back to it right here. Heaven Officials Blessing. Yes, there we go. This one is DVD and Blu-ray, regions A and B. Did that say English? It does say English. Although it also says Chinese. So that might mean that under some of my definitions of anime, this isn't actually anime. But I guess for people who are anime interested, this is definitely a noteworthy thing to get. Where's this one? Japanese with English subtitles? Well, now I'm curious to make sure. There. Better ink. There, yep. And last but not least, we have Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation. This would be Season 1, Part 2. I just mostly remember it's Season 1, Part 2, but I'll be honest, I'm having trouble reading that. This was a fun series. Regions A and B, English dub and Japanese with English subtitles. Focus camera? Is the camera not focusing? Maybe it's just me not focusing. Talking about beach. Actually, the art looks neater on the inside. Now, if there was one problem I mentioned with this show, it's that it kind of felt like it meandered in a way that living normal day-to-day life might, but it kind of felt like some of the theming felt a little weird. Again, kind of realistic with how real life might feel like it changes. But oh, it's all stuff. Now, before I put this back in there, let me actually walk across the room over here and pick up, Season 1, Part 1 Limited Edition, so that we get to see it all together. Okay, I definitely had extra stuff in there. And I see that that was covered in a slip cover, so we put this in its slip cover. Put this in here. And voila. Here's this week's anime DVD collection update. Alright, we've got the usual litany of anime to go through. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world. Like I mentioned, episode 9 kind of had a very interesting way it performed its ending. It's episode 10. Kind of an interesting follow-up to that. Did I have any strong impressions? Some somber words in there. Things that are very depressing to hear and to think about, and I don't know. I would have more thoughts. The truth of the matter is some of that stuff I don't try to think out loud about. So, okay, episode, I guess.
series is kind of fun. I guess just kind of lacking in the feeling of this is where I'm expecting it to do, or this is what I'm expecting from it. It feels a little weak in that department, but still neat. Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skills, episode 9. Let's see. It followed up from episode 8. I mentioned episode 8 set up some interesting stuff. They did that interesting stuff. There's been some interesting conversation stuff that's happened. I guess overall a kind of neat episode. Something didn't happen that I thought was going to happen, but that's okay because it's almost kind of a side thing, I suppose. So, fun. And the nice thing is, since that comes out every Tuesday, after I upload this update, that is one of the higher priority, this is coming out today, that I get to watch. So I'm always looking forward to that. Let's see, Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and the Genius Young Lady, episode 10. Jesus Christ, I spent half this video just pronouncing the names of titles these days. Let's see. What actually happened in episode 10? That got set up, that. It's okay. I mean, in terms of it continuing to have a plot that is something that you can take serious, it's good. It still has a problem where, again, if you fell in love with the way the main character was in the very beginning of the series, it continues to be, okay, we're not getting a lot of that character, it feels like. And it felt like it was a little beating around the bush, so it didn't have to actually explain what it was about to do in the next episode, just intentionally hint at it for the last 5 minutes or something like that. So, okay, I guess. But, obviously, me talking about it that way, there's something I'm missing. Onimai, episode 10. What happened in this one? The New Year's one was the last one. Okay, this one I thought could be more interesting, but it didn't explore that interesting. And this is related to the fact that I've kind of talked about how the show has this problem of not really properly addressing its character's mind is in another body sort of scenario. And the most common one is, the series wants us to treat the main character as a middle schooler when you could say they have a middle schooler body, I guess. I mean, maybe they only have a body that looks middle schooler. Maybe, though, they suffer from dwarfism or something that prevents them from ever properly growing through puberty or something like that. I mean, for fuck's sake, we're talking about an anime where you can drink something, you turn from a guy into a petite girl, right? But if you put all of that aside, there's also the question of, does our main character consider themselves a guy or girl? It's kind of interesting when it kind of bounces up against that a bit. But as a show, it kind of tries not to. And so for a lot of purposes, it is just almost the cute girls doing cute things here and there with the occasional mistakes here and there. And the other interesting thing has always been just what it chooses to animate, with nothing jumping out a whole lot these past couple episodes. Although this time it felt like some of the outro cards, intro cards, the commercial break cards, the animations they do for those, something about a couple of those felt like they were going for something very different animation-wise. Nothing's stuck out to me in the show, although now that I think about it, saying this, there was a scene where the main character was massaged, and if that was highly animated, well, I happened to actually be rinsing a dish at the time because I think I had just eaten some lunch, but I don't remember. So I was putting dishes down there and too exhausted to pay specific attention and just keep track of the story. For which Onimai is not the greatest show to do that if you're trying to look out for those moments where like, holy shit, that's something to animate. Wow. And I guess the massage scene could have been there, but maybe I missed it. If I missed it, feel free to tell me. I don't respond to a lot of YouTube comments, but I do feel like I get a vague idea of what comments come through, maybe. Well, sometimes I get the pop-ups on my computer, and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I go to my comments on that computer and see what has been commented. I'm like, oh, maybe I should have answered that person 3 weeks ago. But it's exhausting. Anyways, once again, Onimai ending is kind of addictive to get to. Although at the same time, similar to how I wasn't able to pay attention to every part of the episode, I didn't feel the energy to stare too intently at the ending to enjoy it, I guess. The weird bounciness of the animation as they're moving around the camera, the yawning of the cat, and the walking of the cat. The walking of the cat is really weird. The picking up of the cat is really weird. I don't usually notice the dancing of the cat in the background, just kind of the wonderfully, awkwardly choreographed movement of the character. Anyways, blah, 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 blah. Ice Blade Sorcerer Shall Rule the World, Episode 10. What happened in this one? I guess our main character's been set up to need to be able to do some important stuff, but it's mostly setting stuff up, I think. Yeah. So it just kind of is. I don't know that it feels like there's... I don't know. The show feels weak in some regards, and I'm having trouble specifically saying why. Hopefully if you've been watching my videos, you're like, oh yeah, I totally understand what you mean. You actually meant ... But I don't know. It's... Yeah, I guess... Yeah, I don't know. Farming Life in Another World, Episode 10. If I were to criticize this episode, it set itself up to do some interesting stuff, but it kind of skipped over some of the parts of that which are just kind of entertaining staples of the series to a certain degree, I would guess. But... okay, yeah. It was just mostly an entertaining episode. It's a series that I enjoy just because I do like to see the stuff build up. I would say I definitely enjoyed kind of the building up of farming and sort of stuff a little bit more. And as I think here it's swaying a little bit away from that. And it could be swaying into more interesting territory, but I don't think it also wants to go that way. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see where the next episode goes, because I think what they did set up at the end of this could suggest an entertaining thing for the next episode. Giant Beasts of Ours. I think we got some information, insight, and knowledge. But otherwise, it's a story that's kind of okay, kind of going. I'd say some of the big problem with it is just that it, as a series, doesn't feel like it gives as much of a reason to watch forward into it as it really should. Curious things happening, you know. I wouldn't say it's a bad series in any stretch. I wouldn't even say it's only an okay series. I'd say it's at least good, if not great. You know, if somebody thinks that it's great, I don't think I could blame them, because there's lots of things about it that are really neat. But yeah, I don't know. Let's see, Fruit of Evolution, Season 2, Episode 9. I actually didn't like this episode again. Part of the problem, I think, is it introduced a character, but it's a character that it had introduced before, but didn't reveal to us that it had revealed or introduced them to us, although at the same time we kind of figured that out based on that other episode. But I think the point is, it introduced an idea where it's just like, this episode doesn't even make sense on its own. Okay, so this character is using their power, but because they're using their power against our main group of characters, they're starting to feel empathy and hope that, you know, kind of counters some of their own childhood pains. But it isn't very clear to me why this wouldn't be a problem they would experience all over the fucking place. Like, our main cast of characters aren't the only cast of characters who have fucking friendships and fucking emotions for each other, so it's like, it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't feel like it actually accomplished anything. It just felt like it wasted time, which kind of made the previous episode also feel like it wasted time. I don't know. Chill in my 30s after getting fired from the Demon King's army, episode 10. I guess I'm appreciating kind of the general direction it was going from the previous episode. And I think where it's going from this episode makes sense too. I think it's... yeah, we're at episode 10, so for a lot of these series we should be feeling like either we're approaching the end of a core, the end of a season, or something like that, or they're planning to go longer than that. And let's see... I guess adventurers who don't believe in humanity kind of felt like it. Iceblade Sorcerer, maybe. Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess, I'm not quite feeling it. Maybe there's something setting up there. Farming Life, I was feeling it. Giant Beast of Ours, could be. So chilling in my 30s after getting fired from the Demon King's army does feel like it's actually answered a lot of questions and resolved a lot of plot that it's brought up in ways that are kind of entertaining and like, okay. A lot of this is making sense in a way that I didn't think this series was planning to make something make sense. So it's good to go. And definitely looking forward to the next episode to a certain degree, I think. The Reincarnation of the Strongest Exorcist in Another World. Episode 10. Hold on, I'm blanking. I'm mixing it up mentally with another anime. What even happened in episode 10 here? Oh yes. They introduced those characters. Interesting characters. Okay, yeah. So they introduced a new character, kind of an interesting character. They also reintroduced characters, Shitty Brother, and I have to say that while his initial attitude was a little eyebrow raising, he's like, okay, he's actually a respectable person now. Still a little bit of that shittiness to him, but more like you understand he's someone that has improved from that, and so I think it's appreciable. But not sure what they're planning to do with it. Were they saying anything that would indicate that this is heading towards some sort of crescendo? I'm not sure. Maybe. Saving 80,000 gold in Another World for my retirement, episode 10. This was a fun episode. If there's any problem I have with this, it's that it kind of ended a little early. Like, it ended at the normal time, but it felt like this episode finally called back to some of the ideas that started being explored in episode 2. And I definitely want to see some of what happens here because it's intriguing stuff. I want to see what it does, what the outcome is. This stuff is very interesting. A lot better than she's doing a questionable job of running this shop. And questionable mostly just means that, okay, there's some interesting ideas in there, maybe a couple good ideas, but some of these are outright bad ideas. It's kind of showing that she's kind of understanding that she has to think about some of that stuff first, but at the same time, you know, questionable stuff. Handyman Saito in Another World, episode 10. I don't remember exactly what I said about episode 9. Maybe it feeling a little, I don't know, like, it felt like it was based around a joke that was just kind of a little too in your face. It's like, it would have been fun if it was just a little thing, but it kept being there and being important, being there, being important. It did end at something that was just sort of like, okay, well, I guess this is a serious, relatively speaking, crescendo for this series. But this episode was a bit of a big one, I felt. Sorry, I'm just pausing because I was just trying to think what all happened. Did it end with things being as resolved as they could have been? Maybe. Maybe not. Oh well, kind of a curious episode. And I would call it heartfelt. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but that's what I would call it. By the Grace of the Gods, Season 2, Episode 10. This is probably one of the most badly named episodes in the series. Ryoma and the Flying Slime. And the Flying Slime just kind of appeared briefly and gets captured, but the episode doesn't seem to be set up towards it, doesn't seem to be set up with it leading towards anything. So it feels like this should have been Ryoma and the Treants. And if the next episode does something with the Flying Slime, it should have been Ryoma and the Flying Slime. But I digress. They might not even do anything with it anytime soon. Knowing this series, they're planning to do something with it because they do plan to do a lot of stuff. You know, they show that they do a lot of stuff with the show. One problem with this episode is a problem that I mentioned that I was worried about for the previous episode, but I guess the writers of this show couldn't resist themselves, and because they couldn't have Miss Love Interest there constantly saying his name and making the show all about him, no matter what she's talking about or doing, because they finally took that break from her, for some reason it felt like this one, okay, now we need to turn it up to 11 for other characters in his life. And so he goes out adventuring with a party of people, and it does feel like the dialogue is all centered around him, even when it isn't appropriate for it to necessarily be about him. Keeping him in mind, yes, sure, but it kind of feels less like this is a party of adventurers for whom Ryoma's joined, and more, this is a party of support characters for our main character who are there to kind of pretend they're not support initially, but then make themselves support, even though they're supposed to be seasoned adventurers. So it's not perfectly that, but it feels too much like that. And I think it's probably one of the common problems with the show. So make of that what you will, but it was okay, I suppose. Maybe they were setting something up for a season finale. To Your Eternity, Season 2, Episode 18. Pretty heavy episode. If there's any problem I would have with it, it would mostly be that this series of episodes has been exhausting. And it's probably okay that it's exhausting, because what the characters are going through is exhausting. But at the same time, I have to admit that I'm also exhausted. I'm like, oh my god, how can this never end? And it isn't exhausting like Endless 8, although Endless 8 is interesting in its own regard. But, it does kind of remind me of some of the feelings that people might have had when watching that. And maybe this isn't as big of a problem if you are watching the episodes together and you can go on to the next thing, because as it is right now, it feels like war is slow. And it doesn't feel like any individual moment is going unreasonably slow. It just feels like the developments are slow. And in reality, that's kind of what war can be like. And so it's interesting in that regard. It's just, again, the trade-offs. And then we have Reborn to Master of the Blade, From Hero King to Extraordinary Squire, Episode 10. Oh, so yeah, it does feel like Season 2, Episode 18 is getting closer to something big that could either be a series finale or a season finale or something like that. Reborn to Master the Blade, From Hero King to Extraordinary Squire. This was a better episode. It helps that they didn't spend half of it having half of the characters apologize to the other half of the characters, usually at the same time. That was just a problem. This one is getting back to our main character is Chris / Inglis. We want to see the situations they end up in. And while I wouldn't say there was any part of this that was really actioning, just kind of some of the throwaway action that has happened the past couple episodes, it is setting up really well for what's happening next, because it was a fun interaction between characters that happened. Other than that, the Blood... I don't remember their name. I want to call them the Blood Blockade Battlefront, but I do believe that's an anime and not the name of that group. But their group is named something similar to that. Something reminiscent to that. I don't know that what they've been saying makes sense, other than there's some elements of it that make sense, but others that are like... I don't know, it felt convenient that things were kind of put forward or proceeded the way they did. But yeah, overall interesting stuff. Definitely better. And again, it could be setting up to some big finale if there's 11 or 12 episodes. It's good for it. Alright, any other anime? No. I did watch one other thing, which is, I did high prioritize watching Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and it's a pretty good movie. I don't think it's without its flaws, but I don't think those flaws make it unwatchable. I think as an example, so the story of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is our titular character, Puss in Boots. He's super bravado, swashbuckling outlaw. He laughs in the face of death, but he begins seeing that his time may be more limited than he was fine to ignore, and he's actually seeing the possibility of his mortality. And that's the inspiration for The Last Wish is, you know, he wants to wish to get his 9 lives back so that, you know, he can continue living that carefree bravado, look at me, I can just do whatever I feel like at any moment sort of character, right? And that's important because that's an overarching story thing. It's played very well throughout the whole show. With a whole lot of elements to it, you know, lots of great things about it. But like, if there's one part of it that I felt didn't work right, it's that realization of potential mortality and him changing his behavior in a way that made him low down, definitely not the hero that everybody would have wanted to see. You know, during that transition, I felt like there should have been more to it. It felt a little rushed. And at the same time, the timeline doesn't feel like it made sense, because that's also, you know, after all of that is when Goldilocks and the Three Bears presumably began keeping track of him. And while we don't have any idea how long he was kind of in that funk, it's just a little weird because it felt like some time passed. Maybe not years, but, you know, a notable amount of time. But at the same time, they're at the village she was at the beginning looking at footprints, which I'm like, maybe the big ones I could expect, but Puss's footprints, those probably got covered in horse shit or something like that. I don't know. It feels a little weird, like maybe if they were there a couple days later, and maybe it was only there, but the time frame doesn't feel quite right. But again, it's not that bad. You kind of understand what he's feeling. It's just that the movie didn't kind of give you this fulfilling, solemn, it's sinking in sort of moment. It just sort of felt like it jumped to where it needed to jump next. And maybe a lot of that was that it needed to get to those moments, those later moments, because that's where the interesting stuff dials it up to 11. I mean, and that says a lot, because it opens in a pretty strong and fun way. Like, if there's anything I could say about this series, it feels fun to start watching it, and it feels fun throughout it. Like, people call Big Jack Horner a great villain because he's unredeemably a villain. Like, they're not just like, oh, well, let's make him morally gray. You know, they get to do that with Goldilocks instead. She gets to be the gray one. He gets to be okay, he's just a bad guy, and we're just having fun with that. And everybody, if you've not heard of the Wolf, of course the Wolf is most people's favorite character. The Wolf is just great, especially because he really ties the theming of the movie together so perfectly well. And in all this, you know, I think it's easy to note that Goldilocks and Three Bears are actually very fun and very great. I enjoyed every moment they were on the screen, too. It's like, if there's any character I kind of didn't want on the screen as much, it might have been Kitty Softpaws, but I think most of that is, I'm not a big fan of upstagey characters. And she towed that line very closely. Some people will probably feel that she was too much, I think. Others probably didn't notice. And, you know, it's balanced well. Where I think even if you didn't like that aspect, it still worked fine for what was happening, what did happen, and everything else all around and surrounding it. So overall, you know, there's a few things about it that are imperfect, but I don't think are irredeemable or even kind of, oh, well, you probably won't like it because of this. Because the truth of the matter is, it's easy to overblow some of that stuff, but it's pretty much fun from beginning to end. It was a nice movie. Well, okay, some parts I wouldn't call fun so much as I would call serious. But they were the good serious. The kind where it's just like, okay, it's taking a break from the fun here because it knows when it needs to be serious. And while there are tiny little jokes in there, they are not inappropriate. I understand that Ant-Man 3 kind of suffers from the problem of it doesn't understand when to tone the humor back. You know, you need to have your serious moments where characters are like, something serious is happening, and Puss in Boots gives you that. I get the impression Ant-Man 3 doesn't, but again, I've not actually seen it, I just get that impression from it. Okay. So, overall good movie. What else is there to talk about? So, Dead by Daylight, I'm definitely focusing more energy on that this week than usual. Next week as well. Basically, the problem is we made a significant progress through the Rift. And if you don't know this, the Rift has a number of levels. You unlock levels by going through Rift fragments or collecting Rift fragments. And there's a total of 70 to reach the end of the tome. And then there's Deep Tome, which is another 15 items. So I guess it's 85 or something like that. So there's a total of 85 levels, and it's only open for a certain amount of time. Then those things disappear, and they may reappear. Well, I say may just because there's stuff that's been in previous rifts that haven't reappeared yet. But the understanding is that they will reappear in the store at some point in the future. But if I want to get them now, then I have to make progress in the rift. And part of doing that involves doing more than just a killer game every night. I need to also be doing a Survivor game every night. And playing a lot more Survivor and unlocking some of the Survivor tome challenges so I get the free rift fragments from those. So I've been doing that sort of stuff just to make sure I complete this rift in time. And it does mean I'm spending more time on Dead by Daylight than the previous weeks. But it's been fun. I'm low MMR. So I'm playing it very chill, where it's not uncommon for me to outclass the other people I'm playing against. Not always the case. So for example, my Nemesis match tonight was, against people that mostly knew what they're doing. The Dwight, I think, was a little bit newer, but, good for him. I wasn't going to tunnel him out just because I noticed that. Just took him once, injure him, beat him up a little bit. I ended up only hooking the Rebecca twice just because I happened to catch her a second time and I wasn't planning to. So I'm just like, I guess I'll just hook them. These people know what they're doing. They're going to get her off the hook. She'll be fine. But, my goal playing a game like that is usually, I want to hook everybody once. And I got that done. Also, I reached full mutation rate with Nemesis to get the daily. So I got everything I wanted out of that. The chases were kind of fun. People give an actual thought to outrunning me. I think they could feel that I was thinking too. And I think they were always a couple steps ahead of me, which, again, I'm not always outclassing everybody else. But, this is one of those situations where I was clearly outclassed. But not outclassed enough to prevent me from doing my one thing, which does indicate a bit of balance if you think about it. But yeah. I tend to be low MMR, so the game I just played as Rebecca was against a trapper who was definitely so new at the game they didn't quite have an idea on how to set up traps. So once I figured out they were trapper and I had an idea of how soon they had started their first chase, I kind of knew, okay, this is a trapper who did not even set up traps in whatever area they started in. And while I was careful going through certain areas looking for traps, it did enable me to be a lot more confident moving around the map, not expecting traps. And yeah, there were certain loops and stuff that they didn't get. My play of the game was probably... So my goal playing here is I just needed a Survivor game, and I needed at least one safe unhook just to finish the tome challenge I had selected. But other than that, my goal here is to protect my fellow survivors, because some of these survivors were also maybe kind of new or maybe playing suboptimal. I'm not quite sure what the Jake was doing, because he got found a lot, but I can't help but wonder if some of his movements made me think he was trying to be thought, or maybe he was trying to be found, or maybe he was trying to be chased, or maybe he was trying to be in the killer's terror radius. It was really hard to say. But they were on Death Hook, and I guess they did that. Either they were trying to save the David from being hooked for his first time, which was a little weird, or they got discovered and didn't know how to outrun. And I can't really tell which was which because I couldn't see the tiles they were running, just their auras from a billion miles away. But the Jake goes down. Again, he's on Death Hook. If he gets hooked, that's bad. So the Trapper hooks the David first. on the hook right there, and the Jake's kind of right next to him. I'm like, okay, my effort is going to be give that Jake a chance, but unhook that David. And I did manage to get close enough to the trapper. I was going to try to make them whiff. I failed to do that. That's fine. That's the risk you take trying to do that. But the entire point is I stopped that trapper long enough so that, it's very possible Jake got out while the trapper was inches away from the next hook. But when I got hit, I went straight to the David, unhooked that David, and the Jake got free, and I got right behind the Jake while he's running. Trapper's chasing him. My idea being, if I go down here and the Jake manages to get away, I've done a good job of protecting these people. And let me see, this was on Garden of Joy, so the side of the house with a pallet on it. The Jake ran there. He ran to the pallet. I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to go towards the doorway because I'm going to expect the Jake to drop that pallet. And I don't want him to feel like he has to save it for me or anything like that, because my goal is for him to get the safety. And he drops it, and the trapper is aiming at me, and then somehow I managed to 360 FO view them, and I'm like, how the hell did I do that? There's not enough space here. Okay, across the pallet, follow the Jake. Jake goes right into the house, and I go left out into the field so that the trapper has two paths. Maybe they don't notice the one going in the house, but they do notice the one going out into the field away from the house with that Rebecca in the middle of the field, and he comes after the Rebecca, me. And I felt like that was my great play of the game. Now, maybe the trapper thinks otherwise, and that would be fair. It's really hard to tell because they were definitely new enough. They didn't know how to drop a survivor once they carried them, because they kind of realized, at the very end, once the gates had been opened and my allies were getting out no problem, that's when I'm like, okay, I can stop looping this trapper seriously. And he had stopped chasing after me as well, because we were close enough to a gate that he was trying to do something about the gate. But for me, it's like, at this point, I've done my job of helping my allies get this far. Now I'm worried about the fact that the trapper did not have a good game. And this is where I stop running and I tell the trapper, come to me, hit me, whatever. And they didn't. I don't know if they seemed indecisive about whether to hook me or to let me go. And then when they brought me to the edge of the gate, they weren't dropping me. So it's like, do they not know how to drop, I guess? So I started wiggling, and it seemed like, okay, they're going to want me to wiggle out and then leave. But then just before I wiggle off, they back up a lot. It's like, did they just change their mind? Oh, I just wiggled off. Okay, I don't know if they changed their mind. If they want to hook me, I want to let them hook me. Because, this is something I'm giving them. I'm not necessarily giving them a kill. I'm giving them a choice to get a free kill. And I needed them to make a decision, and they weren't quite sure, so they placed two traps. So I jumped in one of the traps, in case they had a daily trapper thing. It's like catch survivors in bear traps. And it's fun to get caught in a bear trap and get hooked. But, even then, they seemed reluctant. Maybe they were thinking, maybe I'm going to, okay, I'll hook. But definitely very strange. That was a story. Heart goes out to the trapper. I hope they didn't feel too overwhelmed, because I know they felt overwhelmed. Well, actually, I guess I don't know that. I know that they should have felt overwhelmed, and if they didn't, then more power to them. Because then they can power through what happened in that game and eventually start getting good enough to start placing traps in loops and shutting down loops and stuff like that. Because they definitely did not have that feel for the game yet. They didn't have the lunge feel for the game. If somebody told me this trapper was so new that this person just went through the tutorial and leveled him up to 15 and put 4 perks on him, I would believe them. But I guess I'll never know. Again, it'd be interesting if the trapper ever heard this video, because, again, I never teabagged at all because I never thought poorly about them. To me, it wasn't about whether or not the trapper was good. It was, what can I do to help my fellow survivors out? Oh, okay, now they're out. Hello, trapper. Let's, you and I have a heart-to-heart. Or blade-to-heart. So, I don't know. Fun stuff. I've obviously been enjoying doing Dead by Daylight stuff. falling behind on Animal Crossing, so I'm trying to keep up with that. And I guess the Sideway raid comes out this coming weekend, so maybe I should start thinking about that. I think I should check the dates. But other than that, that's this crazy week. Y'all are watching this video tomorrow, the day after I've recorded this, which is Pi Day. So y'all have a nice Pi Day.